All right, so on this video, I'm going to go through and explain how to use the scripts that are involved for the Today with God project. There are several different scripts, three for each of the books, one for each of the book, and then there's the one for Who is Jesus. They're all Excel files, and within Excel, you'll find that there's a newer version of Excel. It will say in the file format the title of the actual file, and then it will be a .xl XLSX. If you notice at the top there, XLSX, and then if it's an older version of Excel, then it will be XLS. And it's important that you know which one you're working with because there is you'll notice it up here, because there are different features that are available within the different versions of Excel. Each of the scripts is slightly different because they were done at different times, and although we're working to try and make sure that they're each the same and uniform, there will be some things that you'll notice different. And it's also possible that you have a different version than me. And so if for some reason you find that you have a different version of the Excel spreadsheet or the script for the program that you're working on, then I encourage you to drop me an email, josh@crosstalk.org, josh@crosstalk.org, josh@crosstalk.org. So that's how you can get a hold of me. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I also encourage you, if you are on social media and you're not friends with me or following me, we can also be in touch through social media. It's facebook.com/Joshua D. Weiss, or on Twitter, it's twitter.com/Joshua D. Weiss 1, otherwise known as @Joshua D. Weiss 1. On Instagram, it's predominantly photography stuff that I do, but that is Instagram.com/Joshua D. Weiss. And it's also Joshua D. Weiss on Periscope, periscope.tv/Joshua D. Weiss. On LinkedIn, it is linkedin.com/in/Joshua D. Weiss. And then I do blog sometimes, and you can get to my personal site at joshuadweiss.com. If you're wanting more about Crosstalk or the ministry that Today with God is from, it's just crosstalk.org, and you can find a lot of information there. And so that's kind of some of the general stuff to get a hold of me. So now let's look through the actual script itself. You'll notice that there's several different screens here, or columns. And these columns are important for a number of reasons, and I want to explain to you, because if you better understand how the actual software works, then you will do a better job being able to utilize the software, and so I encourage you to do that. Let me make sure, yeah. So on the left column, column A, is loop number. And the reason why there's different loops and different loop numbers is because if you were to take a scripture and try to translate the entire passage or even the entire verse, sometimes that's too much information to be able to adequately translate, because in different languages it works, it takes different amounts of time. And so what we've done here is each loop is a thought, a complete thought or a complete sentence or something that would be able to be an individual line that you would go ahead and translate and make into a loop. So loop 1, you'll see the questions of life have answers. That's one complete thought, and then there's the Spanish over here of what that translation would be for that specific loop. And so the loop number is important. And the reason why it would be helpful to keep track of this or to make sure that you're using this is because as you get down the road and you're working with a different actor or somebody that's going to be translating something, if you are maybe in different places, different cities, you can reference where you're at in the script by just saying, go to loop number 218. Not this column over here on the far left, but column A, that's the loop. So that would be able to reference arrest him. And so make sure that as you're working with your different translators, if you're working with your actors, that you're identifying the loop or at least aware of what the loop is. NIV reference. So all of the scripts have obviously a word-for-word translation of the Bible, and depending on which script you're working on, it will have the references. So if there's nothing here, that means that this is not actual Bible. This is a portion that is maybe an introductory part or some of the tour guide elements. And then as you scroll down, you'll start to see this right here is an NIV reference for Matthew. All of this is from the book of Matthew, and it's chapter 4, verse 23. And so if you have a version of the Bible in your mother tongue, in your language, you can go to Matthew chapter 4, verse 23 and be able to see this exact verse in your language. And if you have that and it's a good version, then you can take and you can put that in the target language of what you're translating into. In this particular script case, Spanish is what the language is that we're translating to. The English is we're translating from. This is translating to. The Spanish will be translating to. So that's column B. It's also helpful to see these drop downs because you can do the drop down. It's this arrow at the top, and you can jump to specific areas. You can select certain areas, and so that is helpful because you can go through the entire chapter 4 or something along those lines if you're trying to narrow down a specific group or portion of the text that you're trying to translate. Then the next column, column C, this is the end time. Now, in video production, we look at time code a little bit differently. In video production, I'm going to type up here at the top just so you can see what I'm explaining. In video production, you might see numbers that look like this. So if this was a number for the time code, then this first one would be your hours, this one would be your minutes, 28 minutes, this one would be your seconds, 18 seconds, and this one would be your frames, 15 frames. There are different frame rates in video. Sometimes it's 24 frames per second, where there's 24 individual frames that make up 1 second of video, and other times there's 30. So this is frames. In these scripts, we've changed it a little bit. And this is because we found that this is a little bit more typical in the translation field where people are doing linguistic work around the world. People use M for minutes. So if there was an hour, this would be H, see the M. And then there'd be the S, which is the seconds. And then there's the tenths. So this is broken down by tenths instead of by frames. And if you touch on this, then you'll be able to find out a little bit, If you touch on this, then you'll be able to see that's 2 seconds and 9/10 of a second. So that's how long, that's where the end time is. That's not the length of the clip, but if you were to play the video from the very beginning of the video, 2 seconds in, almost 2 seconds or 2.9 seconds in is when this line starts. And this line then takes 2.5 seconds to say it. So that's the length of the time. So if we scroll down way down here and we want to see, okay, if you just pray that prayer from the depth of your heart, the Bible says that you are saved unto eternal life. So that's this clip right here, this English script. That's Bruce speaking, and that starts at 45 minutes in, 31 seconds into that 45th minute, and 8/10 of a second. So 45 minutes and 31 seconds and 8/10 is when this starts. And then this one sentence is spoken. It takes 8.4 seconds to speak it. And the reason why that matters is because when you work on this translation in column I, that translation length for each one of these loops should match or be as close as you can be to the length that it was in the original source language. And so this one here should be able to be spoken in 8.4 seconds, just like the English one was in 8.4 seconds. And by making it similar in length, without taking away from the meaning or what's being said, it will allow you to make sure that the script, the voiceover that is being heard on top of the video that is being seen matches up. Because ideally, you want the words that are being heard to match the lips that are being moving and stuff. You want the words to match that so that it looks closest as it can to that person saying the words that the audience is hearing. The next column is the speaker column. And the speaker column is possibly one of your most helpful columns for the translation project that you're working on. Why do I say that? Well, when you're in the field and you're trying to work with different voice actors and actresses, you might have only 10 different people to do all of the translation for the entire project. Well, that means that 10 people have to play the role of however many speakers there are within that episode. And so those 10 speakers have to be more than one person many times. Or another reason why this column is important is because if you only have so much time with one individual, let's say you've got somebody that's coming in from the village and they're going to be translating the part of the narrator. Well, if you try to wait and have all of your actors for the entire script, for the entire project to come together at once, then there's going to be a lot of people standing around waiting for there to be progress for their specific part. If the person comes in from the village and you know that they're only going to be doing the narrator part, this is why this column matters, because you can go to this drop down where it says column G here, column G. You can hit that arrow and you can scroll down. You can undo the select all and you can scroll down. Let's go find the narrator, select the narrator and hit OK. And now, in theory, if this is correct, the only thing that's being seen is the narrator. And that means that you can have that person do all of the narrator parts and be done and not have to keep coming back. That's a very helpful feature when you get into some of the larger book portions. Now, this is the narrator portion for just the Who is Jesus script. You can see Who is Jesus is the title of the script. So this is the narrator portion for just the Who is Jesus. Then I can come in here when I've got the next person ready, and let's say, where is Randy? So Randy's the host of the program. That's the person that you see on screen when it's not the Bible portions. So let's see Randy's portion. And you know that there's all of this that is Randy's actual portion. So the person that's going to play the role of Randy, you can select just the Randy parts and have them go through one at a time to record the Randy parts. And as you record the part, you make sure that it's the same length, or at least as close to the length as column E. And when you go to insert it later, you're going to insert it at the time frame of column C. That's where it comes in. That's where it begins. And so this column for the actual actors is extremely helpful in making sure that you're being the best steward of your time when it comes to working with a number of different people that are translating or playing the roles of the different characters within the Today with God project. Then we've got the column H. Now, column H is it's obviously the English script. The English script is the original script. So all of the video that you see was originally done in English. And that means that this here is the source language. It's the initial language that the videos are being done in. And that's important to note because as you, sorry, my identification or my emails are coming up here. That's important to note because if you're using Spanish as your initial source language, let's say you don't speak English, you can right-click on this column and you can go hide. And now that's no longer there and you don't have to be distracted by the English if you don't speak English. And so now at this point, let's say you're going from Spanish, this version of Spanish, let's say you're going to make a Mayan version or a language in some other part of the world. So you would use the translation column, and now you would translate this column into these boxes, still using the same length, still the same start time, still the same narrators, but starting from English or from Spanish into the next language. Now, for sake of time, I'm going to unhide that column because we're using it for now. So these are the loops. Remember the loops. Loop 18 is this complete thought. And it is helpful to notice that there is red and black. Red and black. What does the red and black mean? This is another area that's very helpful for you to know as you're working through the scripts. If the script is black, if you see the text in black, that means that those words are being spoken without seeing somebody's mouth actually moving. So if you say the question of life have answers in your language or the language that you're translating it into, it does not matter as much for you to line up your words or your voiceover, your recording. It doesn't matter as much to line that up with the video because the audience watching that video does not see the lips of the actor or actress speaking. And because they don't see the lips of that person speaking, it's not as important for you to try and make sure that your voiceover matches their mouth. If the script is red, that means that the audience will see the person speaking that, and so as you say this part in Spanish, it needs to match the person speaking it in English as close as it can, because when they open their mouth, you should be opening your mouth. When they close their mouth, you should be closing your mouth. And because this is on screen, it's a little bit more important that you try to match what you're doing when you're doing your recording to what they're doing. So that's the case all the way through the script. As you see black, that means that their voice or their face is not seen. As you see red, their face is seen, and it's more important for you to make sure you try and sync up your voiceover with their lips as best you can. Then there is column I. Column I is a little bit obvious. We've kind of talked about it a little bit thus far. Column I is used for the next language that's being translated. In this case, that language was Spanish. And so because we want this to be usable for others, we're going to keep this column in here and do our best to maintain as best we can the other languages that we get, so that if there's somebody down the road that wants to translate to their language, like we see in column J, but they don't speak English like column H, perhaps they do speak Spanish in column I. And so they can use the Spanish script that's already put in here to create the next language that we're going to put in column J. That's important because if you recognize the value of what we're doing by keeping both of these, hopefully you'll be able to give us the script that you're using in column J so that we can maintain and keep that and then be able to use that for somebody who might want to use your language to translate into their language. So column I is the Spanish version, column J is the language that you might be translating yours into your language. And then column K is pretty self-explanatory here. It is comments. So look at that, there's a typo in there. So this is a note that was made by the person who created the script. His name is John Boyd. And John put a note in here that the Spanish audio combines these first two sentences. And so when we look at this, the first two sentences are put together, and he wants us to know that because the loop and the time will be different. And if there are specific notes like that, then we'll work on that as we go. And it's helpful if you have notes that you want to let us know that you'll put those in there for us to know as well. So note that the red text be lip synced. That's what he was talking about, like what I was mentioning a moment ago. There's not normally going to be a lot of notes, but if there are, it's probably helpful to read them and get an idea of what they're saying. So in this case, you can change this to bless you or enjoy or let's begin. And so please stay tuned. He's just letting you know that, you might not be having a commercial, which is where this goes after this video or after that word was stated. And so you can insert something a little bit different like bless you, or enjoy, or let's begin. And that may be one of the only notes. Let's look. So the leper is saying, ah, ah. So that's not really in the script, but that's one of the things the leper is responding to. So it's important to go through and read the comments and get an idea as you work through. So in recap, the entire script is made up of these columns, and they're very, very helpful to note. The loop is the complete thought that's being translated, referenced by a specific line number, like line 4. The reference is going to be the Bible reference of where the script is coming from. The end time is where the time code starts when you're playing the video from the beginning. The length is how long each individual loop will be. The speaker is just that. It's the person that is speaking the script. Column H is the English script. Column I is the Spanish script. Column J is the next language that's being translated. That's what you're going to be using. And if it's in red, that means that the speaker is on screen and you should try to lip sync as best you can. So this is the Who is Jesus script. This is where you should always start. So if you're just starting off and translating Today with God, the English or the Who is Jesus script is where you need to start. That's the very first thing. Then the next would be the John script. So this is called TWG John script. This is English December 3rd, 2015, and this is an XLSX, which means it's the latest version of Excel. If you don't have that version, we do have XLS, which is the older version. And now this is broken up a little bit different. Who is Jesus is a standalone single program, single episode. John and Matthew and Acts and Luke are all several episode programs. So the book of John has 11 episodes. There are 11 different 30-minute programs that make up the book of John. And so what you'll see here is episode, that's what the EP stands for, episode number. So everything to this point is episode 1. And then as we scroll down, episode 2 and episode 3 and so on and so forth. So there are several episodes. Then you see the loop number, which is the same as what we talked about before. The John reference, that's the Bible reference from where it's coming from. I think that this comes from the Good News translation. The end time is the same as it was before. This starts 24 seconds and 3/10 into the program of episode 1. And the reason why the episode matters is because as you come down here, you'll notice that there's another part, like on episode 2. Episode 2 has something starting at 20 seconds and 9/10 in and 32 seconds. Well, that's going to be confusing if you don't realize that there's multiple episodes, because those same things are here at the beginning of episode 1, the same times. Each episode is 28 minutes and 30 seconds, or in these cases, I think the commercials have been cut out, so they're 24 minutes. Then you've got the out time. So this is a little bit more detailed than the Who is Jesus, because the end time is where it starts. This actually says where it ends as well. And then this breaks down the length of how long each loop is. Then you've got your speakers, your English script. For John, we don't have the Spanish translation in this particular script, and so you'll be going from English to the next language. I will be trying to get the Spanish script because it should be out there. And then you've still got the red, if it's on camera or not, and a comment section. Now, when you get into the speaker box, this is a lot more helpful when it comes to the multiple episode series like John, because when I go and I deselect all, and I choose to pull up something like the narrator, you saw in Matthew there was not very many, but when you're going to the entire book of John, there are a lot of different things that the narrator has to say. And so what you'll do is you'll pull your narrator in, who's ever going to be that voice, and you'll just start recording each one, and you'll record. In the beginning, the word already existed. So how long did that take me to say it? Hopefully 2.8 seconds. and then you'll say that in your language, and you'll just record it a few different times, and you might time it as they're doing it, knowing that it needs to be around that length. And if it's a little bit long or a little bit short, maybe you have the person speak a little bit faster or speak a little bit slower, or change the wording to where it keeps the same meaning but can be spoken in the similar time frame. And if it's just not possible to make it to where it's the same length, then you note that it's just not going to be possible. You do the best you can with what you have to work with. So that's John. Now I'm going to jump over to Matthew. And the Matthew script is very similar to John. You've got the episodes, the loop, the reference. Matthew is all NIV, the end time. Now Matthew right now does not have the length. It just says the end time. Let me see if there's anything in here. There we go. Nope, that's frames. So Matthew does not have the length. What you would do is you would come to the conclusion that starts at 3.4 seconds in. The next line starts at 7.8 seconds in. And so in theory, you only have about 3 seconds, a little bit more than 3 seconds to say this. You shouldn't need that long, but that gives you an idea of how to figure that out if you only have the end time and not the length. This does have the English, the Spanish, the target language, which will be your language, and then comments. Then we have the Acts script. Acts does not have the Spanish yet, and so it's similar to the others, but you've got the episode column, the loop column. The Acts is straight word for word from the NIV version. The end time, there's no length, so you've got to kind of come to your own conclusions. Then there's the speaker, same thing. The language that it started in, which is English, the target language, and there's actually not a comment section for the, oh yes there is. If you see something like this where you're scrolling and you're only scrolling on the left column, that's because there's a split right here. That split is just a split screen. It's just letting you see both things at once. So that concludes the explanation of the scripts. It's important that you understand the scripts. Again, if you need to get in touch with me or if you have any questions whatsoever, you can do that at josh@crosstalk.org. If you want to reach me on social media, it's facebook.com/Joshua D. Weiss. It's twitter.com/Joshua D. Weiss1. It's instagram.com/Joshua D. Weiss. It's periscope.tv/Joshua D. Weiss. It's linkedin.com/n/ you guessed it, Joshua D. Weiss. And then if you want to read the blog or anything like that, it's www.joshuadweiss.com. So feel free to drop me a line. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. And until next time, be blessed and happy translating.